What's up, guys? Welcome to Podcast 412, Fight for Purity. A bold way of looking at challenges that young people are facing. We'll talk about the naked truth of life and how to handle the problems you're thinking but not talking about. So strap in, get ready for another great podcast.
All right, everybody, welcome back to our podcast. Last podcast, we talked about what purity is and why we thought it was so important. We define purity as something that has definition and having boundaries in different areas in our lives, and it's possible for anyone to have. And this week, we will be looking at where does that path of purity begin. So keeping in mind 1 Timothy 4:12, which is our kind of basis scripture, just keep that in mind as we continue to go. And to kick us off, we're going to start with a Facebook poll where we asked anybody, where does purity begin? And we've got a couple different answers. We got at birth, with your parents, and with salvation. So where do we all think that purity begins?
So for me, I was thinking about it, and I think where it begins is you making a choice. Like whoever you are, you're a young person, it's about you making a decision. And I was kind of looking at, we talked a little bit about making wise choices or smart choices and foolish ones. And this, I would say, is a smart choice. And a smart choice is an intelligent, an informed decision, something that's going to affect your life, something that's going to affect what you watch, what you hear. And it's going to affect also, like, who are you going to allow to influence you when you make this decision. But it's really about you making a decision for purity. And one of the things, I know, like for me, when I was growing up, purity was something that you didn't really talk about, but you knew it was out there, and your family, well, my family, we never talked about it. But the way that I was kind of guided in that direction was just being told, don't get pregnant. So that was the sum of what purity was, But nobody really gave you like direction on how do you do that, how do you maintain that, or how do you achieve that, how do you stay pure, you just knew it was something that was kind of expected, but yet not expected, you kind of were expected to try to do that, but at the same time it's like, well, you probably weren't going to be able to, just because of the way that the environment that I grew up in, it wasn't, like I said, there was no roadmap, there was no guidance. It was just, don't get pregnant, and I think that's how it is with a lot of people out there, I think a lot of young people, they want that. They want purity. They want to, have respect for themselves. They want to, not follow what everybody else is doing. Because I think we live in a time where you can kind of see where the choices that young girls are making bad choices and where it's taking them. And I think a lot of young people can see that, especially one of the things I think I looked up, especially about Albuquerque, is that probably 50% of young girls are going to be single mothers. And so there's one reason why you should be pure, because you don't want to be that 50%, that's going to be a single mother, because it's not a good choice. So that's where I kind of came to my conclusion, was that it's up to you and you can make that choice. Oh yeah, and then one more thing too that I wanted to clarify was we talked about purity, and we don't want people to think that purity is about you being like flawless or perfect, like you're like you have no weaknesses or you're not going to struggle. But purity really is about you choosing, what you're going to filter out, how are you going to filter things that are bad in your life and put some good in there, because that's what purity is about. It's about maintaining something in your life. It's not about being perfect or about not struggling, but it's about learning to filter things out, because so many people today, they don't filter things out. You hear so many things and you don't filter them out. You don't make like informed decisions. Your 12-year-old friend tells you something, you're like, oh, okay, I'll do that, but filter it out. Think about it. You don't have to. You can make a choice. So, and that's something that I always talk about, is you can make a decision to not do things or to do things. Just be wise and think about it. Don't be foolish. Don't just do what everybody else is doing just because. What does a 12-year-old know? So, not much. Yeah. So, but yeah. So on to you. So
when like, well, going back to the whole don't get pregnant thing. When I think back to when I was younger, well, from my family, my mom got pregnant at a young age, and then so did my sisters. They're teen moms, and so when I got pregnant when I was younger, I had a comment made to me by a family member. It was like, I expected more from you, like you should have known better out of everybody. And when you talk about, well, no one gives you like, that roadmap to get there, like no one told me how. I mean, I know like they say, oh, there's protection, but like the decisions that I made prior to that, no one spoke to me about, like if you make this decision, or, it's going to lead down this road, or if you start to feel this way about this guy, or you're questioning if you should, I was like, by friends, I was encouraged to sleep with the guy, because then, he'll cheat on you, or he'll, you know what I mean? And so like, I guess like for me, when purity would start for me with my parents, and whether they teach you wrong or right, I think for me, it starts with your parents, just because of they're the first people to influence your life, and have the most impact on your life and your future and everything. And for me, growing up, I grew up in a broken home, and I don't know if any of you guys out there know what a broken home is, but for me, a broken home was having a dad who wasn't really a dad. He was an alcoholic, and he was a drug addict, and he was like, he cheated all the time, on his girlfriends and all that. And my mom, she was there for me up until her and my dad split up, I guess, when I think back to it. And she drank and stuff. And even in the relationship with her and my dad, when problems arose, she ran, so we would take off to North Dakota, or, like if she was in a fight with my dad, and then come back, and then everything was, fine, and she would take off and run. And then when problems arose and stuff, the way that they handled stuff was through fighting, arguing, throwing stuff, going off when there was stress or anything. One of the things that, growing up, like learning how to handle problems, and I think this is even purity, like when you're thinking about, how you handle stuff, what you watch, listen to, or what you allow yourself to say or do, I think kind of starts in the home dynamic. And so when I would see them getting frustrated or whatever, their thing was anger, or to go off, or to run, or, and so that was kind of my reference point growing up. And so as I got older, I handled stuff that exact same way, or, I learned to cut people off, or, out of my life and stuff, and I built this wall and barrier. And so when I started to make decisions as a teenager, and then having the influences of friends and stuff, and, what you see on TV or whatever when you don't have the best home life, I didn't understand the consequences that came with my actions, or like what I was doing later. So, all these decisions, I got pregnant at 15, I had my daughter at 16. I don't remember if I mentioned that last time or not. But, it's not that I just like decided one day, I'm just going to go have sex and that'd be the end of it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just going to go out there and do it, but I think it was just all the decisions and all the things that I allowed into my life. And so that's why I think purity too isn't just about sex. It's about, the decisions that you make. So I was watching stuff that probably wasn't, everything that you watch is like put something. So everything has a message. I think I've heard that before. I don't know if you guys have, but like everything's a message. Everything that you listen to, watch, everything's sending you a message. And even if you don't think that it is, it does, because certain like music and shows, they're all meant to make you feel something. Everything's meant to make you feel something and do something. And so, I think for me, just what I was watching and who I was allowing to influence my life, and who I was allowing into my life, and to have like a precedent in place. I don't know, like another word for that, but like to have a higher place in my life, I guess, of influence. I didn't like, how you're saying to filter out your life. I didn't filter those things out. I just kind of let whoever, kind of talk to me. And even if I didn't listen to it, some of those thoughts still played in the back of my head of stuff that they would say. So like even when that person told me, if you don't sleep with him, he's probably going to cheat on you. Well, she cheated on me regardless. You know what I mean? So it didn't matter if I slept with him or not, he still cheated on me. And so, that even though in that moment I didn't like think that much of it, it was something that always played in the back of my head, of the thought. And instead of like having someone to go to, I just kept that thought to myself, and it just stayed there. But I don't know if
Well, I think
For
just
you.
kind of bouncing off of what you said, like it starts with the parents. Like I grew up in a single parent household, and I myself am a single parent. I'm part of the 50%, but that's because of my choices, you know. Like I didn't have the best example growing up. Yeah, like she would tell me, you know, like to trust in God, to lean on Him, but but I didn't know how to do that. Like, she didn't show me how to, I guess, navigate through that. Because she would try to build on the principles of Christianity and, like, tell me, like, you know, that I have to save myself and all that. But she didn't say why. She didn't explain why. But then she allowed me to do things that necessarily weren't the brightest things. Like I was able to have boyfriends, you know, like that was okay as long as he treated me fine, but just don't do stuff. Don't have sex with him.
But she didn't tell
But
you
she didn't
what-
tell me why,
Yeah,
or
or what-
what could be the consequences of those actions. And like just going back to like not having that, like I remember in middle school, like, you know, you're young. The frontal part is not fully developed. And like an example would be like I had this boyfriend in quotation marks, but I only thought that we were in a relationship Monday through Friday, not the weekend. You know, like he didn't exist to me on the weekend, and then we'd pick it back up on Monday. But like that just goes to show, you know, like when we're young, we don't have those. We don't have the maturity for that. And then so bouncing off of what, you know, Teresa said, like it does, I believe it does start in the home and with the parent, and like how they teach you and how they help you navigate through life, how they give you those like, well, don't do this because of this. But I never really understood why, because I never really understood like what she went through as part of it. She just told me not to do things. And I don't know, it wasn't until like I got saved and like, and what that I don't know if anybody knows what saved is, but I don't even know how to explain it. But like when I started going to church and started to build a relationship with a God, if that makes sense, that's when I finally understood like how to be pure and how to, what they were saying, you know, filter things. And it's still a struggle now, but at the end of the day.
Yeah, well, I think like going back to that whole not really knowing like when you're younger, like what relationships are, you know, the whole Monday through Friday thing. I think you had a story, right, about
Yeah, because I had a friend in middle school. She was like very, you know, she was used to having relationships. We were only in middle school, but it was like a normal thing to have quite a few relationships. And I remember the shortest relationship she ever had in middle school was for the lunch period, which I think back then was like half an hour, maybe 45 minutes. Because I remember her coming up to me at the beginning of lunch and was like, oh, I'm with so-and-so. I was like, okay, great. And then I went on about my lunch, and then we saw each other in class afterwards, and I asked her, I was like, how the heck did that happen? And then she was like, oh, we're not together anymore. I was like, okay, that was quick. That was, I guess, you realized you didn't like him in a matter of 45 minutes. But somehow you were still wanting to be in a relationship with him. Like, I don't know if they ever talked before that. I don't know if she just saw him or if he approached her. I have no idea how it started, but she ended it. That's what I do know, though.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, like what you guys were saying about just the maturity, you know. I mean, I know you want to think that you're grown up, but I mean, the standards I think that you have, I was listening to some girls talking, they're talking about their standards for a guy. And the standards were just about, oh, you know, I like the skater guy, or I like the hoodlum guy, or I like, you know, and I go, that's a standard? Is just what he looks like?
A movie character?
Yeah. That's,
You know, I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I want somebody like that. But
Yeah.
like, looking back, it's like, those aren't standards.
yeah.
Like, that's,
But that's what you say. You say, well, my standard is this. I was like, but that's not a standard. You're just looking at what he looks like on the outside, or, you know, how he makes you feel, or that he's funny, you know, which is not bad, but I mean, you can't
It's not, none of it's like deep.
And
It's just, oh, he was nice to me.
yeah, he was nice to me.
He
yeah.
told me I was
He
pretty.
said some nice words.
He gave me flowers.
Yeah.
Well, I think that goes back to what you were saying in the beginning about how you didn't know how to do anything, like, or how to be pure. Like there's these standards, and right now there's the standards of having a relationship, but you don't have a reference point or a standard for what makes a good relationship, what makes a healthy relationship. 45 minutes, that obviously, that wasn't a healthy relationship, but you don't think about the consequences of like the emotional roller coaster of being in a relationship, even for 30 minutes. A lot can happen in 30 minutes emotionally. You know what I mean?
Well, especially in middle school.
Oh yeah. So, and I think that just comes back to like us just being like, okay, we need something to help us guide us through what purity is and how to get there, and those small choices on how to not get to a point in our lives where we're like dang, like I'm not thinking about the consequences. Like you said, she's not like her friend. You weren't thinking about the consequences, on the weekends, when you weren't in a relationship, or after class, and that guy who was like, dang, I missed out on that girl, But you're not thinking about it, and I think that's just like super important just for us purity is about that. It's about, like you said, filtering things out. So you're like, okay, this is good, this is bad. Having a short relationship isn't okay, or like how I'm being treated, like when I'm angry, or when things aren't going well, I shouldn't run away. I shouldn't like respond in anger. Those are all filters and everything. Like with music, it's like all people get crazy with shows, people blow up and they start, punching walls or whatever, and movies and everything, and that's your reference point when you're young, and that's important, like what you were saying, just filtering it all out, so that way we do think about the consequences, because you don't see it in music, you don't see it in movies. It's a cut scene and it goes to something somewhere else, or they're arguing and all of a sudden it's the next day and they're like, we're fine now. That doesn't show how to work things out. It doesn't show how to manage your emotions or anything. And I think we really do need to just find different ways to do that. And when we come back, we'll talk about that. So let's go ahead and take a quick break.
Let's suppose that a kite could come to life and develop its own personality. On the one hand, it would feel the exhilaration that comes from the surges of wind that direct it through the sky. On the other hand, it would almost immediately take notice of something annoying. The tugging of a string at its center, a feeling of constraint, resistance, and soon the kite begins to think to itself, if only I could detach, then I could really fly. To the kite, you see, it seems that the string is limiting its full experience of freedom. But as any boy or girl who has ever flown a kite knows, were that string to suddenly snap, the kite wouldn't soar freely for very long. It would dart to and fro for a minute, maybe two, but very soon thereafter it would end up on the ground in a pile of broken sticks and torn paper, never ever to fly again. Rather, you see, it is the taut line between the kite and the one holding it that enables the kite to fly, that allows all the principles of aerodynamics to come into play so that the kite might achieve its full purpose.
Okay, so welcome back, everybody. So I had a question for everybody, and that was, what's toxic about being pure, or why is it looked down upon, or what's wrong with being pure? Why is it such a negative when you talk to young people about it? Why is it such a negative thing, or why is it something that they're like, oh my gosh, it's impossible? So I want to hear you guys' comments on that.
Well, I know there's a thing going around. Well, I don't know if it's going around, but there's a thing I've seen. It's like that toxic purity culture, and that goes back to what you're saying. And I think a lot of what it is, like, well, even just for me growing up a little bit in the purity culture, a lot of it is like you hear no a lot is what it feels like when you're younger. You hear no, you can't do this. No, you can't wear that. No, you can't go there. No, you can't have these kind of friends. That's what it feels like when you're younger, because you feel like you're being put in a box and you're not allowed to break it. And if you break it, oh my gosh, smacks all around, and all this crazy stuff. And I think that's a lot of what people outside of the church see is all they see is you being, as a young person, you being told no, you're being constrained, you're being restricted, you're not allowed to be whoever it is you want to be, you're not allowed to grow. And I think that's a lot of where like the negativity and the toxicity comes from, is that people think it's just no, for no's sake. Like, you can't question it, you can't ask why. And I think that's where a lot of that comes from. I don't know if you have anything.
Well, yeah, that the same thing. Like, just you feel like it's all rules, rules, and like I guess our natural nature is we don't like rules. We don't like being told no. No one likes to be told no. No one wants to be told you can't do that or you can't do this. I feel like nobody enjoys that. Or no one enjoys, being wrong or stuff like that. And I guess that's the toxic part, is that you just feel like, oh man, I can't do nothing. And if I do, or let's say you were trying to follow those rules, and you were trying to, obey your parents or whoever set those standards for you, but then you mess up, and then you feel like, oh, well, that's the end. They're like, there's no compassion. Like, well, you feel maybe there will be, just depending on what kind of family you grow up in or whatever. But when you're constantly told no, you kind of feel like, well, if I mess up, I'm a disappointment. I let everybody down. There's like no way coming back from this. And then and it feels, I guess the biggest thing, it just feels hard. Something impossible to achieve, and you're expecting me to achieve it. Especially like if you grow up around people who didn't have those standards, or didn't have those rules in their life,
and they seem fine now.
And so you see them, well, they did it, like, what's the big deal?
Like,
what's
they're
the big
okay.
deal? They're okay. They seem happy, or like feeling like you're missing out on something, like friends from school, or friends in general from work or wherever you're at. Like, they seem fine, they seem happy, it doesn't seem like big of a deal. Or if there is a little bit, like if they show a little bit of their struggles, you're like, oh, well, it doesn't look that bad, it's just a little extra baggage, but you don't realize like how
it's like an iceberg. It's just a tip.
You just see the tip of it.
Like...
I guess that's what you feel like, is just, it's always no, you can't do nothing, your life is boring.
It's like set way up here,
and
if you can't reach it, it's because something's wrong with you. It's because you're doing something wrong. And that's I guess that's the toxic part, is that that's how it feels to you when it isn't shown right. When you're younger, like we were saying earlier about how nobody shows you how to get there, or why it's important, you're just told no. So I guess coming from the other side, because like me and her, we grew up in that purity culture, like where we're raised to be taught right and things like that, so we understand it now. Now that we're older,
but you don't see it when you're younger.
Well, even like for me was, and I didn't really have like a whole bunch of rules, but I had some. But even when you saw friends, I don't know if it felt like this, but when you have friends, like, dang, your parents let you do that, like, that's so cool. But no one tells you about the loneliness. Or like when I had some friends, they don't see the, gosh, like, my parents aren't there. Like, I don't know, I'm pretty sure your parents were always around and always there for you, and you didn't have to worry. Like, well, so for me, growing up, I didn't know when my mom went out partying what kind of guys she was going to bring home. I didn't know when she was in an abusive relationship, if I came home, if there was going to be fighting, and if I was going to have to protect my mom that day. And so when you come from that background, I was like the caretaker of my mom. So like, I don't know, when you guys saw me come to church, you probably didn't see all that. You probably saw someone that was fine, a stoic look, And so even, when growing up, though, by the time I was 12, I had experienced so much that a 12-year-old shouldn't have gone through in that time. I protected my mom from her abusive boyfriend. I have scars from him. Like, I had to call the cops. And then as I got older, I didn't know how to, like, when I started making decisions, I guess I didn't know how to navigate through kind of those things, how you're saying, like, those emotions and stuff. And so when you start to make those decisions, even if you're not meaning to, or you weren't taught, you still feel like the shame, I guess the feeling you would feel after doing everything. And then when you start, like, the first time I slept with someone, I felt so dirty. It didn't feel like this amazing thing,
It wasn't like the movies.
Yeah, it's not like the movies where it's like fireworks, and, you know,
And music,
you know, and you felt that you did something wrong, you know, and then after that, you know, being cheated on and stuff, like, you're not gonna be with the same person. You know, I'm not with this my daughter's dad. I'm not with him anymore, you know. So then I have the consequence of like having my daughter grow up in two different households now, and she has to bear kind of that, you know. And so I guess from the other side, it's just like it becomes like a burden on your life, on your mental and your physical. It's affected me in my relationships, having multiple partners as opposed to just being with one person, you know, and experiencing life with that person, and not having, I guess, insecurities, you know. I wouldn't have said I had insecurities because I'm like, I can be with whoever, and, you know, like, if they don't have me, then they're gonna miss out, you know. So like having that attitude, but I guess that's like a wall of insecurity. And like when I was in the world, I didn't see it as insecurity. I thought, well, I'm the best I'll ever have, and it is what it is, you know. And so, you know, like, they're missing out. But so for me, it's just a constant mind battle. And so even in marriage, it's affected me, you know, now, and how I view, like, I guess, my marriage and my husband, and just different areas of my life. I guess it's affected me till this day, you know. And I've been saved now for since 2015. Now it's been since 2015 I came back and gave my life back to God, and it's still something I battle with every day in my mental, and because even perversion, you know. So the first time I saw pornography actually was when I was in kindergarten. And so like for me, like even that, like a mindset, you know how it's like men have to watch their eyes. So like even for me, that's something I have to do because of all the stuff I open doors to, you know. And I don't know how it's affected you.
Well, there's not a lot that I remember from my childhood, but from what I do remember, it's not the best.
So you guys are talking on the end of not being pure, being toxic.
Not being,
yes,
you know, because they were talking about the toxicity in being pure, and you guys, just so that we clarify that when we're talking.
Yes.
I chose not to be pure.
Yes, so choosing not to be pure. Well, no, and like a lot of it wasn't by choice when I was younger. I would sometimes go to a friend's house, and then my mom would just, you know, she'd let me go wander around the apartment complexes, but she always thought that I was going with friends, and I was going with friends, but they weren't the best friends that I should be hanging around with. You know, there was times where people took advantage. But like, from what I do remember, you know, I was always like striving to cling to something, whether that be even from younger age. Like I was in second grade and I had a boyfriend, but like, what do you know, in second grade. But like growing from that, like it was just like constant, like, oh, I have to have somebody there. And then from somebody there, it turned into hurting family members, and then into searching to just fill that emptiness that you know, where you feel like you're missing out on something, but you can't quite pinpoint it. So you're trying to search in all these things to like fill that void, the emptiness. If that makes sense. I don't know.
Sorry. No,
I'm like, my brain's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
but like,
No, it makes
so like I would go to
Yeah.
drugs, I would go to men, I would try to like fill it and try to like find it and all that stuff. So I guess that's like the toxic side of not like choosing purity, not being able to
Yeah, you're not
save
as-
yourself from
yeah.
the
And you're not as
consequences of.
fulfilled as you
Yeah,
think you
well,
are.
that's not even like, because you talked about like in second grade, that's not even you choosing purity. That was from your parents allowing different things to not be filtered out of your life, like we were saying earlier. So I guess. No,
Sorry.
go ahead.
No, I
go-
just don't
go for
want
it.
people to think that there's no hope either.
Yeah, no.
Because like I've come a long way in, I think, even my marriage. I hope, you know. But like
We'll ask
even
him afterwards.
yeah, but there's like, you know, that there's hope. Like even if you choose, even if you grow. I'm not saying to go do it because there's still consequences, but like there's still hope. Like if you do fall into making the wrong mistakes, you know, it's not that you're doomed forever. Like, you know, God's really like redeemed me, and he's, I guess, in redemption, it's like kind of fixed some areas that like I never would have known how, like even in my anger, or even in like the way I see myself, the way I see my marriage. Like God's like kind of patched those things up and like healed those things. I guess in redemption is what I mean. So so I just want you guys to know that there's hope. Like if you have, or if you don't come from that, or if you want that, like it's still a possible thing.
Yeah. One last thing I wanted to say, I was thinking about, how the question was about like what's toxic about being pure. When you think about every other element, like when you think about anything else being pure, like we talked about water being pure, we don't see that as a bad thing. Or when you talk about like, I was thinking about like gold or silver, everybody wants something that's pure because the more pure it is, the more valuable it is. And I think it goes the same for you, but even getting to the process of that, it's a process. You have to find your way, like I said, not letting things contaminate you, not letting things, you guys talked about how it was for you, like you felt like, no, everything's no, but
that was the process.
But that was the process, is learning to say no made you stronger. Learning to just go against the current made you guys stronger. As to where on the other end, you went with the flow, but you're still facing the consequences. And you're facing your consequences, but they're not bad ones. And some of them, because of decisions that you made. So, but, I was looking up one of the things about water, if water is pure, it flushes out your toxins, it improves your complexion, it relieves headaches, it promotes weight loss. That's a good thing. That's a good thing, And how much more if you choose purity, that, you're not going to have to deal with certain things in your life. You're going to have like a clear conscience, and you're not going to have to deal with like shame. You're not going to deal with guilt, And like I said, you're going to feel good about who you are as a person, not about, but just the decisions that you make, it's going to define you and give you character and just make you confident, So I think that's the thing that our society doesn't tell you about purity. Because not being pure is, you're free. Well, you're free to
feel empty.
Free to make bad choices, free to, get pregnant, free to, like you're just exposing yourself, and you don't realize that in purity there is protection. You protect yourself, you protect your mind, you protect your body, you protect like your self-esteem, and your character. So
and I think that goes back to what we said about how purity isn't just one thing. It's all different things. It's your mind, it's what you listen to, it's your friends, and because that affects different parts of you, that affects your emotions, it affects how you regulate certain things. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about next time. We're going to be talking about how to apply purity to your life. Like, what boundaries do you need to set so that whether you are growing up in a purity culture or you're growing up in a home where there's no boundaries, there's no filter for your life, how you can set that up for yourself so that way you're able to regain some of that purity, so you can figure out how to not feel empty or how to not feel like you're being put in this box where you can't do anything. And that's what we'll be talking about next time. So thank you all for joining us.
Thanks for listening. Join us for our next podcast. You can contact us through Instagram at podcast412 or email us at 412fight@gmail.com. See you next time.